Hello, this is Dr. K. Paul Stoller, and this is the last video, part 4, based on my peer-reviewed article, Oxytocin, the Bringer of Creation and Destruction. Now, don't expect an institution designed to create and raise children to also be a vessel of passion and fulfillment. Those of us who became parents know just how much work and devotion it takes to raise a child correctly. It is a whole lot of work, and today, both parents are deeply involved if they are being responsible. Be that as it may, many women don't have a clue how to take care of babies and raise children, but I don't think it was ever meant that they do this on their own. Motherhood can be full of pitfalls. Few are prepared for the stress, demands, or sleep deprivation of being a mother. Then there is the societal pressure to be a good mother. The feminist movement made women think they could have a career, be a mother, and do both well, but that was a lie. In many respects, having children is a romance killer, if not a marriage killer, outside of a supportive extended family and community. Because even as oxytocin levels drop by themselves in a long-term relationship, LTR, having the stress and responsibility of being a mother, can accelerate the drop in oxytocin levels faster than you can say irreconcilable differences. This is one of the factors that literally drives many to drink. Is that a problem? Yes, alcohol is a neurotoxin and will pickle your brain and destroy your liver, to name two. Oxytocin deficiency does facilitate alcoholism and other addictions, but few have connected the dots. Now, typically, there is a lot of sex when a couple gets together with an LTR in mind. Then they may get married, and the sex goes from 3 times a day to 3 times a week, and then 3 times a month, and then 3 times a year. In the context of an LTR, men have sex to help solidify an emotional bond and reinforce trust. That is really why most men even get married in the first place. Yes, it is about seeking external validation, which is a fool's errand, but it is fools that fall in love. Fools because we don't understand to what degree our choices are being influenced by hormones. Now, this is poorly understood by both men, but especially women, even though this is not rocket science, but when the sex goes, so does the trust, and that marriage is over. It may go on for years afterwards, but in name only. No amount of therapy will help this. It would be like taking someone who has lost a lot of blood to a talk therapist when what they need is a transfusion. The bears repeating, for men trust and sex are joined at the hip, and once trust is lost, there is no getting it back. It is an understatement to point out how volatile a situation this is, both because it is neither understood nor is there appreciation of how this destroys relationships. What was driving all that physical intimacy at the beginning of a relationship? Oxytocin. What stopped the intimacy? Lack of oxytocin. Now, oxytocin does not affect men the way it does women. Giving oxytocin to men does not increase their libido. Men have testosterone to drive their libido. Oxytocin does increase the libido of most women, so if the oxytocin is not there, then there is no interest in sex. It is a great way to deconstruct a relationship, but if you know what is going on hormonally, you don't have to be an unconscious slave to these physiologic minefields. Knowing one's oxytocin levels drop in an LTR, one can proactively supplement with bioidentical oxytocin if that LTR or marriage is something you want to keep healthy or even keep at all. If women understood this trap, it would be so easy to mitigate the problem. But there is almost no one who understands this. For men, sex is a biological drive. It is not just a desire. That drive is fueled by testosterone, the level of which in Western men is dropping faster than you can say soy boy. In the past, the only way men could get sex was to get married, but that is no longer the case in the West. You know what they say? Why buy the cow when you get the milk for free? Promiscuity has been destroying men's interest in getting married, which is already being understood as a very high-risk venture. They can get what they want without marriage, or a long-term commitment with or without marriage. Sexual freedom may feel liberating, and it was, but it was also limiting. It limits a woman's ability to obtain an LTR or marriage with a man. Promiscuity in combination with porn may be the final nail in the marriage coffin, because at the same time men don't want women with a high body count, and most in the dating market have a high body count, some dangerously high. Since drinking alcohol increases oxytocin levels, Many women turn to alcohol to increase their oxytocin levels so they can accommodate their partners without understanding why this is needed, but that is not a healthy way to increase one's oxytocin levels and obviously can and often is a gateway to addiction. Some will say sex is in your head, and that is partially true, for if that oxytocin is not in a woman's head, she will not be interested in sex. It is there for free at the beginning of relationships, and then it fizzles out. I would argue this is a universal physiologic guarantee, but not understanding this facilitates a preventable relationship collapse. There are many reasons for supplementing oxytocin other than relationship issues. But on a personal level, we all need to understand that oxytocin plays a crucial role in social bonding, trust, and emotional regulation, key components of a healthy long-term relationship or marriage. Here are the ways the lack of oxytocin can disrupt one's life. Reduced emotional bonding and trust. Oxytocin is essential for forming and maintaining social bonds, including romantic relationships. Low levels will reduce feelings of closeness and trust, leading to emotional distance between partners. Depression. Low levels are linked to mood disorders, including major depression. Loss of empathy, impaired ability to recognize emotions in others. fMRI studies. Brain imaging studies reveal that lack of oxytocin decreases activity in brain regions linked to love and attachment. With women with little to no oxytocin, subconscious fears and trauma gain access to the emotional center of the brain, and fight or flight starts to develop, having nothing to do with the current situation or reality. So there is increased stress and conflict. Lack of oxytocin will increase cortisol, stress hormone levels. A deficiency will make couples more reactive to stress, increasing the likelihood of arguments and conflicts. Impaired conflict resolution. Lack of oxytocin helps promote negative communication during disagreements. Without oxytocin, couples will struggle to empathize with each other and resolve conflicts effectively. Decreased physical intimacy. Oxytocin deficiency will lead to reduced physical affection and sexual satisfaction, which are vital for marital stability. Memory and learning deficits. Oxytocin is involved in memory, particularly social and emotional memory. Increased risk of metabolic disorders. Some research links oxytocin deficiency to obesity and insulin resistance. Scientific evidence. Studies on oxytocin show it is indispensable for healthy muscle maintenance and repair. Supplemental oxytocin improves lean muscle mass and lowers LDL cholesterol in older adults. Switching to the postmenopausal set, I submit they should be on oxytocin as if it were a vitamin because it causes anabolic bone metabolism, preventing osteopenia and/or osteoporosis. That would solve the fight or flight problem for the postmenopausal women, but even this suggestion will not fly in the medical paradigm we have been dealing with for decades. Nothing gets promoted if it isn't making big pharma money. Now, if it ever became common sense knowledge that this is what could cause these irrational behaviors, remember rationality is the domain of the prefrontal cortex, and relationship destruction, people could have their radar out for this and proactively take oxytocin to mitigate this pathos, but we are nowhere near that level of understanding. We do understand there is postpartum depression, which is an extreme example of this phenomenon, but how do we treat postpartum depression if it gets treated at all? SSRIs, perhaps. I would be recommending supplemental oxytocin with a chaser of saffron, which is a serotonin analog. Serotonin is an interesting neurotransmitter that for most makes them feel happy and relaxed. But postpartum depression is a red flag that this new mother may be at risk for an oxytocin deficiency if she doesn't already have one. Look, there is no one out there helping couples understand any of this because no one seems to understand this. And I am not saying supplementing oxytocin is a 100% fix, but being aware of the problem and taking the appropriate intervention, such as supplemental oxytocin, could save a few relationships. I can only offer a quantum of solace to men who have been on the receiving end of a relationship that went from dream to nightmare without rhyme or reason. Oxytocin deficiency was the cause, and it wasn't anything that they did or didn't do. They never had a chance. It is the enemy within, and this enemy always wins. Always. Now, I'm not talking about abusive relationships, a gay husband, a broke-ass man with a substance abuse problem, or finding out your partner is a flaming narcissist. These problematic relationships are real, so there is a real reason to get out of them. I am talking about relationships where all the ingredients for a harmonious partnership were there, but for the oxytocin deficiency, and that happens far too often. Unfortunately, this information is not known to healthcare providers or the general public, and it could be decades for others to catch on to this. But do we have decades? Many make excuses for each other and toss out hormones as part of the problem. It is often said flippantly, but hormones really are the problem, and there are potential interventions. In the past, people paired up because they had to, in a sense. Options were limited. That is not the case today in our affluent society relative to how things were 100 plus years ago. This is a non-trivial issue, as it could eventually cause a societal collapse, and I don't say that lightly. If it happens, will it only be the fault of low oxytocin levels? Of course not. It is never just one thing, but the oxytocin issue is completely unrecognized. And if we are to attempt to maintain viable long-term relationships, it needs to be understood. Also unrecognized is that in the last 100 years, our connection to nature and natural cycles have been bred out of us, and this disconnection from nature and our true natures has led to innumerable problems. This is the end of part 4 and the end of oxytocin, the bringer of creation and destruction.